Abarera, Legos, Ram, Ori, Banish, C10, Demonio, Dinaja, 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 Abarera, Legos, Ram, Abareros. Ram Ori Banish. C10 Demonio Dinaja Abarera Legos 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 Ram Ori
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Satan and Coffee, Sunday Black Mass. So, as we begin every Sunday, hail Satan, hail Lilith, hail Lucifer, hail Pyman, hail Baphomet, hail thyself. We reject the Trinity, we reject the baptism of John, and we reject the baptism of the Spirit. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, wonderful Sunday. I made my best effort to go and see Two Pondering Pagans. I actually miss watching that show. Their Sunday service, very very interesting conversation regarding the LGBTQIA plus community. And it was enlightening. I would say is what it was. Turn on just a wee bit more. It's a little too loud. There we go. So I think I want to kind of continue on a conversation that Mystic had started in his show today, that I found interesting, and I wholeheartedly agree with. Hail Bjorn. Hope you're doing well. So, Mystic started a conversation, started talking about kind of like the protesters that were at the Pride Parade that he had attended, and certain things that they were saying at the Pride Parade, and I'm a bit disappointed in humanity. honestly, because I feel that haven't we finally grown past the point of protesting somebody's pride and how they feel and what they believe, who they are as people. Like this idea that everyone thinks that it's wrong to be proud of who you are. If it differs from what you're proud of, right? That there's something in, like, there's apparently something inherently evil about being proud of yourself, regardless of who you are. It's and it's being proud of, you know, surviving, um, the turmoil that you've been through and the people before you have been through, in reaching a certain point and pinnacle in history where it's more acceptable to be who you are. You know, so people, for example, you know, like, I want to kind of squash something really quick. Is something that kind of irritates me, right? The concept that, you know, um, everyone is able to be proud of who they are, you know, outside of, white people. And I don't want to get political, but I do want to talk about this quickly. And the reason why there's really no reason to be proud of being white, right? And it's not to say you can't be proud of yourself as an individual, as a person, right? And it's not to say that as a, people being white, as white people in general, are inherently bad. I'm not saying that either. But when I look at gay pride, when I look at, Pride Month, when I look at, Black History Month, all of these things, so many people, so many, you know, different kinds of people have been through so much shit in history. People of color endured in slavery. And yeah, of course, there is a time period where, obviously it didn't matter what race you were, people were enslaved regardless over in Europe, right? Whether you're a white, you're a person of color, you're a Chinese, it didn't matter. It just mattered, whether or not you were born into royalty or born into a certain, family, and if not, then, indentured servitude or slavery was, a thing. But I look at these points of pride to say it's not necessarily, you know, just, pride for how you were born, but being proud of the fact that you are who you are and you are no longer subjugated to the things that your ancestors were subjugated to. That's how I look at it. And I'm hoping I'm explaining myself well here, right? Because I know this is a super sensitive subject. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I just want to stop the arguments before it actually happens, right? Because I know some jackass is going to watch this somewhere down the line and, try to tell me that, like, well, you can't be proud if you're white. And, like, it's just the whole concept of white pride has an entirely different connotation to it, and a different meaning, historical meaning to it than any of the other, aspects of being proud of who you are. I mean, I'm proud of being pagan. I'm proud of being, black magician. I'm proud of being, left hand path. I'm proud of being a graphic designer. I'm proud of, my accomplishments. I have pride. I just don't have white pride. I don't feel a need for it. I'm just another human being. That's it. But I do think that other cultures need to be celebrated, that need to be, recognized for surviving as long as they have and continuing to try to survive, to continuing that fight, to be, accepted and incorporated into society on an equal level. And so going back to what Mystic was talking about the Christians coming out and protesting the Pride Parade that he had attended. And honestly, I think we need to get kind of past this point of protesting lifestyles. Like, honestly. Like, I mean, a Satanist has, a public, kind of like get together, there's Satan Con, and then there was like a few public rituals that were held, inside of, public buildings and things like that were heavily protested, and it's always the Christians. It's always the Christians that are protesting. Like, I don't understand this. And so, one thing, like, I like to make my offhanded remarks about Christianity and Christians in general, and I will continue to do so. If my offhanded remarks about Christianity and Catholicism offends you, then you are in the wrong place. Let's just put it that way. Because I am definitely one of those people that I fully believe that your being offended is your problem, not mine. I'm not going out of my way to try to offend you, but if something that I say or a viewpoint that I have offends you, that's on you. That's not on me. That's how you feel, not how I feel. You're the one that's offended, right? So you need to look at, who you are and what you're doing. I don't, right? Because I'm just expressing an opinion. And it's always the Christians that seem to kind of go out of their way to piss people off and protest everyone that has a different belief system, regardless of whether it's religious or not religious, right? And it's getting kind of sad, especially the foul remarks like that. That's another thing, because you're talking about an event that had children, and I trust Mystic wholeheartedly. And so Mystic said that, this particular event was very family friendly, and, there were children all over the place. And I think that's great. I think that the concept of family friendly should still exist. I don't think that children should be, exposed to certain things too soon. Being a father myself, that's just my opinion. But I do think that they should be able to understand, gray age, hail. I do think that they should be able to attend events like this and be able to understand why, it's being celebrated, regardless of, their, potential orientation later on in life, when they begin to understand that side of themselves, but to also understand that it's okay to accept that part of themselves if they feel that's where they're leaning to, and know that there are people that, are there to support them. And I think that that's an important aspect of things. And the things that were being said in the presence of children by the Christians, I think goes very far to say, who really is the enemy here? Who really is the evil, right? Anyone that would stand up in confidence to call another human being an abomination for loving another human being, I believe, is true evil. I believe that is the definition or the true portrayal of what evil actually is. And, the same with, those that mistreat us in the occult community. Because at the end of the day, our beliefs make us a minority. We're a religious minority, sadly. And we are constantly attacked for our beliefs, constantly torn down and told that we're going to go to hell and, this, that, and the next thing. And, and I guess with the Christians and the Catholics, I guess everybody goes to hell if you don't, believe in Jesus. But I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I find it disgusting that is something that is happening. And I definitely go with, the Satanic Bible on this one, because Mystic was talking about, there was somebody there that said, no, we can't fight, hate with hate, because then it just begets more hate. And, we can't be, um, we can't attack, we can't, defend ourselves, because then we're in the wrong, we're the same as them. And he was talking about how he disagrees with it. Bible contains violence, genocide, and other things not safe for kids, yet Christians insist on exposing kids to it. Exactly, Lady Tessa. I completely agree with that statement, wholeheartedly. Right? Now, when he was mentioning, it reminded mentioning kind of like that aspect of things, right? Of, not being quiet and letting them say their piece, but defending themselves. It reminded me, one of the 9 satanic statements, right? Which would be number 5, which is Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Okay. And I think that that's a big one. And then when we were going through the book of Satan not that long ago, right? There was one in here that, it really kind of stood out to me. And though I can't find the exact line in scripture right now, paraphrasing, it goes along the line of, if somebody presents themselves to you as your enemy, if they reveal themselves as an enemy to you, and they try to smite you, smash them and destroy them. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean kill them, right? You need to make that clear. There's many ways to destroy somebody that doesn't involve ending their life. But I fully believe that defending yourself when you're being attacked, when your person, when your essence of who you are is being attacked, it is vital that you defend yourself. It is absolutely vital that you defend yourself in that moment. Don't let the moment pass. So even though the Satanic Bible does talk to us about vengeance, and vengeance is a natural human reaction to certain things, sometimes we need to plan our attack before actually moving forward. But I personally believe that in the heat of the moment is the best time to defend yourself, right? If somebody tries to take a swing at you, knock them down. In the moment. Because in my personal opinion, if somebody tries to take a swing at you and you manage to get away and you leave that situation is over. The situation is done. The next time that something like that happens, you can prepare for the next time something like that happens and then take action and defend yourself. But the way that I believe things, once you exit that situation is over. I do not believe in going on the offense in a situation like that after the fact, right? Because violence for violence sake does nothing for anyone. But I do believe in defending yourself in the moment, and I believe it's the same thing verbally. If somebody tries to begin to attack you, begin to, degrade you as a person, defend yourself in the moment. Prepare yourself. The best defense is a good offense. And how does that work, right? How do we not go on the offensive while being offensive, right? To protect ourselves. Well, if you know that you're going to go into a situation where there's potentially going to be people that are going to try to attack your character, that are going to try to degrade you publicly, then try to prepare your responses to these people and make them as intelligent as possible to run circles around them. You are, in turn, being offensive in your defense. You are being prepared to defend yourself. And that is being proactive, preemptive, right? In your defense, which you'd say is you're still defending yourself. You're waiting for the attack to come. Once the attack comes, you defend yourself, but you were prepared for that defense. So you were already on the offensive, knowing that you were going to need to defend yourself. Hopefully this is making sense to people. It's not a contradiction to say that leave a situation, that situation is over. If that situation happens again, defend yourself. If somebody swings at you, like let's say you're a student, I know there's probably going to be young people that are going to be watching this at some point. You know, if you're a student, you got a bully at school. Obviously, there's a list of things that even your parents are probably going to tell you. Go to your teacher, go to your parents. You know, stay inside of groups of people that you know that can help defend you. You know, these types of things. But if you are in a desperate situation and you have a vicious bully at your school that is just constantly fucking with you, right? And you know that this situation is going to arise again. You got away from this situation today, but you know tomorrow it's going to happen again. Then prepare for that situation that is going to happen tomorrow. That is the offense. That is the this is where this idea of the best defense is a good offense. And how can we be the best at defending ourselves with offense is to be prepared for our defense. Your preparation, your preemptiveness, that is the offense that becomes the defense. If you know that tomorrow that bully is going to be there and you know that there's not going to be anyone to help you, then be prepared for that moment. Be prepared for that moment. And then defend yourself viciously. Become an animal when you defend yourself. And gain respect through fear. Your enemy should fear you. Your enemy should be afraid of what you're capable of doing. Respect through fear. Now, there's other ways of getting respect from people, but sometimes people aren't going to respect you on your character. They're not going to respect you on the points of your value, what you give to the world. Sometimes fear is necessary for that respect. Now, that fear can be presented in many different ways. People can be afraid of you legally. Like if you understand the law, if you understand what you can do inside of the law and make the law work for you, and you know somebody is breaking the law in the way that they're treating you, then you can use that and make people afraid of you because of your knowledge. Fear doesn't always have to be incurred through violence. People can fear you for different reasons. Right? And obviously not all respect should be gained through fear. Because if that is the only way that you gain respect is through fear, then that makes you a tyrant. And I don't think any of us really want to be a tyrant. We want to avoid that. So there is that, again, I'm going to quote Batman here, and I do this quite often, but, you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that is a line that we constantly teeter on the left-hand path. We do teeter that line of being a hero for ourselves and a hero for others and then becoming a villain. And only we as individuals can understand that line and understand that determination. Okay, with all that being said, I want to get back into the book here. So let us continue, shall we? See, peace through fear, but courage through strength. Your generation is the future of humanity, and how can people discourage our next generation to think a certain way? All the time. That happens all the time. I mean, I would never ask how can people do that. They do it all the time. The government does it. They do it all the time to, control people. You know, if the government or, you know, the powers that be don't like, you know, the way that you're thinking and think that your thoughts are dangerous, you know, they're going to encourage you to stop thinking that way. Let's be completely honest here, everyone. Okay? It is, sadly, when a popular opinion reaches the media and the media begins to present an opinion as popular, 9 times out of 10, that popular opinion being presented by the media is being presented to force you to think that way. And I'm not saying if it's something that is in your value circle to not accept it, but I would ask the question, why? Always ask why, regardless of what it is. Why? Why am I being told to think this way? Anytime the media, the government tells you that you should think or act a certain way, your next question should always be why? Why do you want me to think this way? Never blindly follow anyone or anything. Always allow yourself the space to investigate, to research, to formulate your own opinion. Do not accept the headline because it sounds pretty. Never just accept the headline. Read the article. And then check the fucking sources. Always, always, always. Sadly, we're living in a generation where most people, they read the headline and they don't bother reading the details. They formulate an opinion on the headline without knowing the facts and just run with it. And that is exactly how, throughout history, it has been shown that the governing bodies want people to think. Think about the news. Like, go back before the printing press, right? Go back before newspapers were all over the place and news, like, you know, the news stories were on TV. There was no TV. You know, like, go back to like the 1800s or the 1700s or, you know, whatever, before like things were mass printed. You remember seeing in movies that guy that stood outside and starts yelling out like what's going on, like in 1 or 2 lines, right? All he was yelling, nobody knew the details of what the fuck was going on. They just had this dude standing in the middle of fucking, you know, the center of town screaming out the headlines. No details. Nobody cared. They just needed the headlines. If anything in that time period has taught us anything, that only getting the headline is dangerous. It is very dangerous to just get the headline. You need the details. News in the TikTok generation is a frightening prospect, right? That's exact. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Our attention spans are intentionally being shortened. Right? We want that quick gratification. Right? You know, when YouTube first started, we would sit down and we could watch a whole video. We could watch 15, 20, 30-minute video without a problem. Now, we struggle to sit down for more than 2.5, 3 minutes to watch a video. That's intentional. Because people just want the headline. They just want the summary. They want to gloss over. First, we read books, right? We read the whole book. Then we read the summary, the back of the book. Figure, well, that's the gist of it, right? You know, and we just read the summary. Now we're to the point where the only thing we're reading is the title. We're not even bothering to flip the book over to read the fucking summary. We're just reading the title of the book. That's it. And formulating an opinion on the title. The very definition of the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover, is exactly what we're doing day in and day out in today's society. That is what we are doing every day. We are judging every book we see by its cover. We're not even giving it the benefit of the doubt to read the fucking summary to see if it's interesting. That's where we are. And it's going to start getting worse. There are many different interpretations of God in the usual sense of the word, as there are types of people. The images run from a belief in a God who is some vague sort of universal cosmic mind to an anthropomorphic deity with a long white beard and sandals. Keeps track of every action of each individual. Even within the confines of the given religion, the personal interpretation of God differ greatly. Some religions actually go so far as to label anyone who belongs to a religious sect other than their own a heretic. Most religions do this, by the way. Even though the overall doctrines and impressions of godliness are nearly the same. For example, the Catholics believe that the Protestants are doomed to hell simply because they do not belong to the Catholic Church. In the same way, many splinter groups of Christian faith, such as the evangelical or revivalist churches, believe that Catholics are heathens who worship graven images. Christ is depicted in the image that is most physiologically akin to the individual worshiping him, and yet the Christians criticize heathens for the worship of graven images, and the Jews have always been given the devil's name. Even though the God in all of these religions is basically the same, each regards the way chosen by the others to reprehensible. And to top it all, religionists actually pray for one another. They have scorn for their brothers and of the right-hand path because their religions carry different labels, and somehow this animosity must be released. What better way than through prayer? What a simperingly polite way to say, I hate you, or I hate your guts, is the thinly disguised device known as praying for your enemy. Praying for one's own enemy is nothing more than bargain basement anger, and of a decidedly shoddy and inferior quality. If there has been so much violent discrepancy as to the proper way to which to worship God, how many different interpretations of God can there be? And who's right? All devout white-lighters are concerned with pleasing God so that they might have the pearly gates opened for them when they die. Nevertheless, if a man has not lived his life in accordance with the regulations of his faith, he can at the last minute call a clergyman to his deathbed for final absolution. The priest or minister will then come running on the double to make everything right with God and see to it that his passport to the heavenly realm is in order. The Yazidis, a sect of devil worshippers, take a different viewpoint. They believe that God is all-powerful, but also all-forgiving. And so accordingly, feel that the devil, whom they must please, as he is the one who rules their lives while here on earth. They believe so strongly that God will forgive all of their sins once they have been given the last rites that they feel no need or to concern themselves with the opinion of God may hold of them while they live. Stop, curse. Ill. With all of the contradictions in the Christian scriptures, many people currently cannot rationally accept Christianity the way that it has been practiced in the past. Great numbers of people are beginning to doubt the existence of God in the established Christian sense of the word. So they have taken to calling themselves Christian atheists. True, the Christian Bible is a mass of contradictions, but what could be more contradictory than the term Christian atheist? I can think of one, but I'm not going to say it. If prominent leaders of the Christian faith are rejecting the past interpretations of God, how then can their followers be expected to adhere to previous religious tradition? With all the debates about whether or not God is dead, if he isn't, he had better have Medicare. So I really wanted to just kind of fly through this particular part here, right, and kind of get this part done because we reread some of what we read last week, but just for context reasons. So I kind of just went through it as quickly as possible instead of just kind of stopping and explaining everything. But so this is a big thing here. So what I'm taking from this again is we're going here. Again, talking about atheistic, atheism and theism, right? We're talking about this kind of this constant combative nature inside of the left-hand path, and especially with Satanism, that atheistic Satanists do not like being called atheistic Satanists because they believe that Satanism is exclusively and can only be atheistic. And in turn are doing exactly the same thing that the church does constantly, gatekeeping and stopping people from doing what it is that they believe in. Whereas in the book itself, and we talked about it like last week or the week before, page 40, I believe, what I said, it was page 40, the first paragraph. Yes, God wanted God dead or alive, page 40, first paragraph, which in my opinion settles the entire argument. You can be an atheistic Satanist that just follows the philosophy and lives your life through the philosophy, or you can be a theistic Satanist that believes in Satan as an actual entity, which does not necessarily mean that you need to believe in God in order to believe in Satan. So you do not need to be, for lack of a better term, anti-Christian or anti-that in order to be a theistic Satanist. Okay? I would personally believe, in my opinion, the only requirement to consider yourself a theistic Satanist would be the belief in Satan as an actual entity. An entity named Satan, Satanas, that you believe in and do your ritual work with. Like, not you don't even have to do ritual work. That's just, I'm just throwing that in there. But just a belief that that is who you are looking towards for everything spiritual. And there might even be variations inside of that. But I would say, in my personal opinion, not necessarily being an authority on theistic Satanism and the different sects of, theistic Satanism, but I would just say that just a belief in Satan. And Satan doesn't necessarily, believing in Satan doesn't necessarily mean you need to believe in God. Because Satan at the end of the day is a title, which just means the adversary. And then that in itself opens up new doors for a belief path into theistic Satanism that may or may not include Satan as the Christians represent Satan. Because if we take the meaning of Satan, Shaitan, which means the adversary, then there are many adversarial spirits. And then we also have to take into consideration, what is this adversary? Where are we bringing the focus of this adversary? What are we adversarial to? Which is why I much prefer calling my Satan Lucifer. Because I don't necessarily need to be adversarial. This is a good one. Is Satan and Lucifer the same entity? Or are they separate? So, many people will argue that Satan, the devil, Lucifer, Samael, all of these different names that were used to talk about the Abrahamic devil are separate entities. I believe that they are all the same and different stages of the entity's development. What's up, Maeve? How's it going? So I believe that these names, so I believe the top bar would be Samael, if we're going from descending order, right? Is Samael would be kind of like the beginning part, like the beginning of what we call or consider Satan. If we're again, this is going on a biblical direction. This is my interpretation of a biblical direction. Okay? And you guys know how I feel about using the Bible in the occult. I'm not a fan of it. I do not agree with it, but for lack of a better way of explaining it, because I think things are significantly more complicated than the way that they're laid out in the Bible. The way that I look at it is, if we're going biblically, Samael was the angel when in heaven. Lucifer was the entity that was the satanic silver fox, right? Exactly. Lucifer is the name used once Samael fell from heaven, because the morning star, right? And so if something falls from the sky, it's, think of as shooting stars. It burns in the atmosphere. It's going to be super bright, right? And you can see it in the morning, right? It's bright enough that even though it's daytime, you can still see the fucking thing. So Lucifer, Lucifer, morning star, right? The bringer of light, the enlightener, is the movement towards the bottom. And then, yes, it is even written here. But again, I've said we're going through a biblical sense, right? So if we're going a biblical sense, we're talking, the biblical story. So this is my interpretation, and everybody's open to their own interpretation. And then so after Lucifer became the ruling body of the earth, the god and the king of earth, he donned the name Satan, the adversary of God. So that is kind of like my interpretation, right? So just for clarification, because we're in the book of Lucifer, and I kind of skipped it, but I'll read it because of your comments. So in the Satanic Bible, it says the Roman god Lucifer was the bearer of light, the spirit of the air, and the personification of enlightenment. In Christian mythology, he became synonymous with evil, which was only to have been expected from a religion whose very existence is perpetuated by clouded definitions and bogus values. It is time to set the record straight. False moralisms and occult inaccuracies must be corrected. Entertaining as they might be, most stories and plays about devil worship must be recognized as absolute absurdities. They are. It has been said, the truth will make men free. The truth alone has never set anyone free. It is only doubt which will bring mental emancipation. Without the wonderful element of doubt, the doorway through which truth passes must be tightly shut, impervious to the most strenuous poundings of 1,000 Lucifers. How understandable that Holy Scripture should refer to infernal monarch as the father of lies. A magnificent example of character inversion is if one is to believe this theological accusation that the devil represents falsehood, then it surely must be concurred that it was he, not God, that established all spiritual religion and who wrote all of the holy Bibles. Then one doubt is followed by another. The bubble, grown large from long accumulated fallacies, threatens to burst. For those who already doubt supposed truths, this book is revelation. Then Lucifer will have risen. Now is the time for doubt. The bubble of falsehood is bursting, and its sound is the roar of the world. Well, exactly. Well, so the thing is so Lucifer, the devil, Satan, all of these terms are used interchangeably in the Bible, has always been represented as the father of lies, right? That's what Christianity does. However, using logic, which is what we do a lot in the occult, hence alchemy, right? There's a reason why, alchemical processes are a thing. So if we use logic, to say that Lucifer is the father of lies doesn't make any sense, because Lucifer, as mentioned in here, and the Roman god Lucifer is the bearer or bringer of light, enlightenment. Light is truth. Light shows you the way. It allows us to see. It can also be blinding if too strong, but light irrefutably is necessary for us to be able to see the path that we're walking on. And if that is so, then Lucifer, the morning star, the bringer of light, the bearer of light, cannot be the father of lies, because it is God that wishes to see you in the darkness. It is God that wants you to follow blindly. The serpent has only ever tried to show truth and logic in a situation. This fruit will give you knowledge and understanding, the knowledge of the gods. Why would you kill your son in the name of a God that's not even here? Why would you sacrifice your son? It is God that asked for a sacrifice. God asked for a sacrifice. Satan, Lucifer, has never asked for a sacrifice. Just allegiance. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But the biggest problem that we run into, Gray, is the fact that, atheistic Satanists, the followers of the Church of Satan, are constantly attacking those that wish to call themselves theistic Satanists, taking away their validity, removing their validity, doing the same thing that the church has done to heathens and heretics throughout history. So, for me, the bringer of light cannot be a father of lies. Because light is to show us the path. God is the only one that has ever asked for sacrifice. God is the only one that has ever asked us to be blind. Lucifer wants us to see. Lucifer wants us to know. This is very much a battle of perspective. And as we all know, history is written by the winners. And so therefore, those that would want us to view Lucifer as a negative force are going to portray Lucifer as such. For the sake that they always be correct, that they always be right. But the stories of the Bible themselves show Lucifer's want and desire for us to be knowledgeable, for us to be able to think for ourselves. Not to hate God, but to question God. Now, well, yeah, I mean, it's funny that the Christians are the ones that kind of turn around and say, "You're a Satanist. You sacrifice babies and cats." When their God is the only God that has ever actually asked for sacrifices, and in every documentation that I've ever seen regarding a somewhat biblically leaning ideation of Satanism or devil worship, sacrifice isn't, a thing, right? Obviously, there's Santeria, which is a little bit different, right? La Santa Muerte, though now you're getting into something completely different. It's still left-hand path. Those, however, do, partake in animal sacrifice, primarily chickens. So it depends on where you go. So are there elements of it that exist in certain areas of the left-hand path? Yes, there are. But Satanism specifically, no. Which is funny because we're the big evil guys. Like theistic Satanists, demonolatrists, we're the big evil. We're the big oh fuck, right? That's what we are. But we're the ones that don't partake in those things. Lucifer is the father of lies in the sense that he is the biggest target of lies, slander, and thank you, Lady Tessa. I love that interpretation. Very good. Yeah, sacrifice is good, but humans sacrifice every day, right now and around us. But I have nothing against beautiful, helpful, and inspiring Christians. I don't have any problem with Christians. Let's make this. Like I need to kind of make this kind of this point here. I personally don't have a problem with Christians per se. Right? There are a few number of people, very few, that consider themselves Christians, never Catholic, but Christians, that I get along with. I wouldn't call them, buddy, pal, no. But they're people that I get along with, that I respect. They respect me. We have in-depth conversation. And we know we disagree with each other, but it's always a constructive conversation. So Christians per se, I don't want to say that I have an immediate irritation towards Christians until they generally open their mouth and start trying to tell me that I'm going to go to hell. Then, I'm kind of like, yeah, fuck off. My issue has been, and always will be with the church. And not just the Catholic Church. Most Abrahamic, Judeo-Christian churches, evangelicals, that's where my problem lies. Big time. Because these are the organizations that are perpetuating actual evil in our living world by taking a pedophile and moving them from one parish to another across the globe where nobody knows who the fuck he is, so they can sweep his transgressions under the rug instead of forcing him to face the law for his actions. Right? And that's just one example of many throughout history of the things that the church has done that are absolutely hideous, horrendous, and grotesque. in the name of their God. So my problem has always been with the church. So when you hear me talk about Christianity, when you hear me talk about Catholicism, if you're a Christian and you're offended, then you're part of the problem. If you're a Christian and you want to have a conversation about it, then we can definitely do that. But the church is the problem. Right? Let's see here. Christ asked for a sacrifice, Luke 19. Yeah. See, the serpent meets the real you in the darkness. The darkness you were kept blind to. Yeah, Lucifer's the fight. Got that. Yes, sacrifice is good. Got that. Didn't Exodus was based around God killing firstborn children, even asking for animal sacrifices? Then Jesus, which is a occurring pattern. I do believe so, Curse. I do believe so. I mean, Exodus is the one that Exodus 22:18 is the biggest one. Like you do 22:18, 19, and 20. Those three right there just basically say, hey, you know, hey, Bjorn, you don't have to call people trolls. People are just expressing their opinions and talking. And I don't see where you're getting off on attacking Eric, because Eric said Christ asked for human sacrifices. And Eric didn't say anything about Satanism asking for sacrifices, you know, so it's all good. Misunderstanding, I think, Eric. I think it was a misunderstanding. I think he just saw the star of human sacrifices and probably missed your first comment, which was Christ asked for sacrifices in Luke 19:27. So I think that was the problem. I think that's where that kind of, right? So, but children, calm down. Don't make me pull over, okay? Because I will pull this car over, all right? I'm paying attention to the chat, guys. I'm paying attention to the chat. All right, I'm here. So yeah, so Exodus 22:18, 22:19, 22:20. Basically, like, if you're a witch, you need to get killed. If you have any type of sexual relationship with an animal, you need to be killed. I don't know if you need to be killed for having a sexual relationship with an animal, but I'm definitely not going to be your friend. I mean, that's just crossing a line. I just can't bring myself to that. So, and I don't see how an animal can be consenting. So, yeah. And then I can't necessarily remember the third one, even though I've quoted it many times. 22:20. But again, if you do whatever the hell it says, then you just need to be killed, right? So there's a lot of death in Exodus, right? So that, I mean, that's a big thing. I'm a folk witch and use Catholic traditions. Can be considered to be a Christian witchcraft, but I don't worship God. So I don't want to break it down, but just by that statement, Curse, I would just stick with folk witch, right? I mean, Catholic traditions, I mean, if you're talking about like ritual, then that's just the ritualistic aspects of things. But if you don't worship God, then you're not a Christian. It's not Christian witchcraft, right? You're just using just folk witch. That's it, right? I'm learning best I can with Satanist, theistic, or atheistic. I mean, honestly, like, I mean, the Italian folk witchcraft, there you go. That works, right? I mean, exactly. I mean, I know a lot of people that work, I mean, the archangels and the angels and saints and stuff like that, things like that existed, you know, long before, you know, Christianity and Catholicism. But I mean, I guess I could see where, like, it's Christian witchcraft if you're using saints and archangels, because it's definitely biblical. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, what I would try to do is take the representation of the saints, what the saints are representing, and go deeper with that. Like, because all of these entities, and I'm going to use the term entities, all of these entities, the saints and the archangels, they're derived from something else. Understand that Christianity and Catholicism, most of the Bible in its religious tradition has been stolen from other things. So what I would do, me personally, is I would take, okay, I like this, but I want to know where it comes from, and then go to the source. Right? Go to the source with it. Dig deeper. And I think that that is going to open up so many doors for you that you might not have even seen before. Right? I think that, you know, I that's what I would do. Right? It's going to be a path. It's going to be a bit, you know, it's going to be a grind. But I mean, if I were in your position, that's what I would do. Blake God doing what he did, but Christians shouldn't act high and mighty. There you go. I mean, just go through it. I mean, do what you got to do for you. Like, I mean, if you want to stick with the saints and the archangels, go for it. But I'm just telling you my perspective of what I would do with that particular thing. It's been, wow. Benedict, which is, well, I've heard that before. It's been forever since I've heard that, though. Benedante. Wow. Been a minute since I've heard that. Benedante. So yeah. I think this has been a very productive conversation. Bjorn, also another thing I want to say, thank you for, like, I understand it was a misunderstanding between Eric and Bjorn, but I do want to thank Bjorn for, you know, viciously defending, you know, the show, even though it was a misunderstanding. like your veracity is appreciated, my friend. Just next time you see something, just kind of scroll up in the chat a little bit. Make sure there's nothing to kind of follow, right? Have you ever considered the difference between belief and knowing? Oh, always. Always. You know, but I mean, the thing is what is knowing? I mean, so the thing is like, here we're getting into kind of like more of a philosophical kind of conversation, right? Is, you know, this is going to go all the way back to the, you know, that question is, if a tree falls in the forest and does, you know, nobody's there to hear it, does it actually make a sound? Right? Now we can say logically that it does, but if there's nobody there to actually hear the sound, do you know for a fact 100% unequivocally that it did make a sound? Belief and knowing is that question, right? So if, you know, you believe something enough to know it, then do you not know that it is real? I feel that way about fart. Exactly, right? 100%. Welcome, Squirta. So if you believe in something enough to know it, on whatever level that you know it to be, then you know it to be real. You know it to exist outside of the idea of other people knowing that it exists. So we know that the tree falling down in the woods makes a sound when it falls, because we know how physics works, right? Even though we're not there to hear it, we know that it makes a sound. So if you're there and the tree falls and it makes a sound, but no one else is there to hear it, then we can argue that it didn't make a sound for everyone else, but it made a sound for you. And you know that tree made a sound. You know that tree is, you know, that sound that tree made as it was falling down was real. Even though nobody else was there to hear it and everyone else doubts you, right? Everyone else says, no, it didn't. It didn't make a sound. I didn't hear shit. But you're like, no, it made a sound. I know it did. So it's the presence of interpretation of your own reality, at least when it comes to spirituality, right? We can begin to kind of apply these things to actual reality, right? Because we're beginning to learn that kind of physics is beginning to kind of like evolve, right? The more that we're learning about, like, all of these other aspects of physics, metaphysics, all of these things, it's beginning to evolve. And we know that the laws are beginning to change in certain areas, right? I do believe that, like, recently, like, there has been a challenge to, the law of gravity, right? That there's actually something else, coming in that's going to replace the law of gravity, which is fucking crazy to me, but it is what it is. If Lucifer lets one rip and no one hears it, it's still so silent but deadly. So it's the idea of faith versus truth, right? Faith is truth to those that have faith. Truth isn't necessarily the adversary faith, because faith is required for belief. And to believe in something if I know there's something in the room with me, it's only my perception that gives validity, right? Exactly. It is your perception that gives validity. If you know that something is there. Now, some people might call that, a psychological disorder and might require medication, which is a possibility, but not always. If you're, working in the black arts and you're calling shit into your room, and you know that after you've done a ritual, there is something in that room with you, regardless of whether or not somebody else can feel it or see it. That's all you need to do is know, right? I mean, that is the biggest aspect of humanity. That's the biggest aspect of being a human being. Being a human being and having the ability to interpret the things around you. Our interpretation is extremely important. Our ability to infer information from our surroundings is extremely important. Much of what was developed like back in the Stone Age, right, for us to be able to kind of, protect ourselves from saber-toothed tigers that wanted to, eat us, right? But it's one of the reasons why myoclonic jerks, exist when you're falling asleep and your body jerks awake. That happens, right? Because your body is afraid that you're going to die. So it shocks you internally and wakes your ass up to make sure things are safe. Go in depth with it and see if it was rational or not. I mean, that's all you can do. But human beings are extremely powerful in that sense, that we're able to look at a person, just look at them, talk to them for a few minutes, and we get a vibe. That vibe, vibe does not do that feeling justice, right? But it's something that everyone understands, right? We know that when we sit down and we talk to somebody, we talk to people, we get a feeling about them. We're like, something's fucking off, man. Something's off. What do? We never talk to the person again. Perception is the only way that we know anything outside our skulls exists. Exactly, 100%. 100%. Last night I had sleep paralysis and not a great time, but called out to Odin, and I was okay. But it happens and need to learn from it. So one of the biggest things with sleep paralysis, and especially if like you have like a sleep demon, that's how I like to call them. I don't know if they're, if you have a sleep demon coming to you. So there's two things that you can do here, right? What I would do for lucid dreaming, and I've done this and it works. So I would tie one thing that would make sense that worked for me to control my dreams is I would tie like a string, like an insignificant string, red, blue, whatever, green, whatever color you want, around my wrist. And what I would do is I would look at my wrist, look at the string, and say, I'm awake. right? So my body registers that I see that string, I'm awake, right? That's the big thing. I'm awake. And I would do that all day throughout the day, like at different times. Every time I would remember, and I'd get my body in the habit. This is going to take like 3-4 days to build the habit, right? And so what'll happen is when you fall into a dream and you're into a situation like that, where you have sleep paralysis and there's a sleep demon, your body's going to be in the habit of looking at your wrist. And you're going to look at your wrist and you're going to see that that string's not there when you're sleeping. And you're going to know you're sleeping because the string's not there in your wrist. And once you're aware that you're dreaming, now you actually have control over your dreams. You can actually begin to lucid dream. You can control the outcome of what happens in your dreams. Right? So that's a big thing. That's a big thing. Another thing that I would do, because words and things like that you can't read in a dream. Like you think you're reading, but you can't read in a dream. And I've had dreams where like I've tried to like call somebody and I just can't see anything in my phone. Like I can't find the number or anything like that. Because you can't read in your dreams. I don't know what it is about dreams that you can't read, but generally speaking, you can't. And so what I would do is I would tape something to the ceiling, right? And it's just something stupid like, "Are you awake?" or, something like that. And if I was sleeping and I look at the ceiling, I wouldn't be able to read it. I'm sleeping. So, I mean, those are a few different ways. I made war water and put it under my bed to protect myself while sleeping. The best thing that you can do is take control. Thank you. So those are two things that I would regularly do a few years ago that really helped with the lucid dreaming and having control of my dreams and knowing that I was dreaming, because I was having a lot of nightmares back then. I don't anymore. I barely remember anything when I dream. When I do, I write it down. But I'm one of those people, like when I wake up in the morning, it's like waking up from death. Like I was dead and I came back. Right? Yeah, I'm Jesus every morning. You know. Um. But so that would be definitely what I do, because then you can have control over it. And then there's a lot more that you can learn how to do in your dreams once you have control of it. Like once you're inside of your subconscious and you have control over that aspect of your subconscious and you can lucid dream, there's so much shit you can do. There is so much shit you can do that you can't do in a waking state. And spiritually speaking, it is something that I think that all practitioners should practice. All practitioners should try to do. Lucid dreaming and controlling your dreams. It's big. It's a big aspect of it. It's one of the reasons why I am so hardcore in what I believe. Because though there may have been many situations in a waking state and waking ritual that things may not have had the effect that I wanted them to have, I have done ritual while lucid dreaming, meaning I was in a dream and doing a ritual. And like, it's not like I actually got up and did a ritual in my room while I was dreaming. No, like, paperclip, greetings, Norway. Oof, awesome. Benibbly, cold. But doing ritual in a lucid dream, whew, fun shit. So I would definitely give that a shot. So everyone, this has been a very productive conversation. I've had a great time with this. We've actually gone over an hour here. So I do apologize for starting late today. And Paperclip, I do apologize for you coming in right at the end of this. This has been a great conversation. Also, guys, if you guys ever have questions, anything like that, join the Discord. The Discord link is YouTube stuff. Join the Discord. You can shoot me a message. You can message inside of the Discord if you want to. And also don't be afraid to use the community section of the YouTube. I always use the community section to advise you guys of something. Like, so for example, if we're supposed to start at 12 Central Standard and I'm not on at 12 Central Standard or starting 15 minutes beforehand, go to the community section if you're not in the Discord, and I'll have it posted there. Okay? If you guys want merch, breadsforthedead.com, merch, right? So water bottles, patches, t-shirts, hoodies, sweaters, you know, bunch of shit. You know, we got some King Pyman stuff in there, right? You know, all that stuff. If you want, like, my online grimoire, that's edisdade.com. That's where I put some of my writings. I need to update some stuff on there, but it's live. You can go there, edisdade.com, you know, if you want my online grimoire. The mantra that is playing at the beginning and during the show for Apocrypha and Satan and Coffee has been done by Behemoth-X. Okay. He specifically did the chant for the show. Okay. So there's that. And I got something else really, really big in the works that I'm going to let you guys know in the next few weeks. It's huge. So I am officially starting an online school with standardized kind of like coverage of the occult. 4 courses starting: general occult studies, herbal magic studies, Satanism, and demonology are the first 4 courses that's going to be going live in the near future. I'm going to officially announce the name and the website and all that stuff in the next few weeks. But we're actually starting, and when I say we, I can't tell you who yet, but we're going to be starting a full-on online university for the occult. And it is going to be massive. Okay? So that's going to be another thing that's going to be in conversation soon. I'll be letting you guys know the details about that. Thank you all very much for being here. Okay, as always, hail Satan, hail Lilith, hail Lucifer, hail Pyman, hail Baphomet, hail thyself. We reject the Trinity, we reject the baptism of John, and we reject the baptism of the Spirit. And of course, as always, hail thy fucking self. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace the fuck out.